Live look at the White House and the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where it's 4:15 in the morning in Israel. New reporting out of Axios details the White House may be losing faith in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after Israel bombed Syria last week. Speaking to Axios reporters Barak Ravid and Mark Caputo, one White House official said of Netanyahu, quote, "Bibi acted like a madman. He bombs everything all the time. This could undermine what Trump is trying to do." A second senior U.S. official also pointed to the shelling of a church in Gaza this week, which led President Trump to call Netanyahu and demand an explanation. The Israeli said it was an accident. The official, however, told Axios that, quote, "The feeling is that every day there is something new. What the F?" But President Trump has remained steadfast on being a Middle East peacemaker. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed the president's ongoing partnership with Netanyahu earlier today.
The president enjoys a good working relationship with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and stays in frequent communication with him. He was caught off guard by the bombing in Syria and also the bombing of a Catholic church in Gaza, which, as you know, I addressed at my briefing last week. And in both accounts, the president quickly called the prime minister to rectify those situations.
Joining us in a moment is Anan, Kheir, former IDF officer from the Druze community in Israel, with the real reason that Israel bombed Syria. But first, we go to Joel Rubin, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under Barack Obama, Democratic strategist, and author of the briefing book on Substack. Joel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
To me, this report got a lot of attention. Oh, they're calling Bibi a madman from within the White House. But to me, what's really notable is President Trump did not tweet about it. He didn't say anything about it. That relationship is what a relationship between allies is supposed to look like. It's not, uncomplicated. But at the end of the day, there is this feeling that this White House and Netanyahu are pulling in the same direction, I would say. Do you agree?
Yeah, a couple of things about this, Batya. First and foremost, this kind of discussion has happened before already in this first 6 months. We saw it on Iran, where there were murmurs that the president was different in his thinking, looking for a nuclear deal from Bibi Netanyahu. Turns out, of course, they were actually playing a game where they were coordinating very closely. And, I think it's always going to be tense. This is not the first president that Prime Minister Netanyahu has agitated, if it is true. This goes back decades. Why? Because he's a patriotic Israeli and he's pushing for Israel's interests. And so, I think clearly, there will always be friction points, but this is not a blow-up like we're being led to believe.
Now, Joel, you've been a Democrat for a long time. A Jewish person, proudly Jewish, pro-Israel. Yeah. There's new polling coming out recently that the majority of Democrats, this is grassroots, now sympathize more with the Palestinians than with Israel. There's a real feeling that the party is now Mamdani's party, AOC's party, especially on an issue like Israel. Where does that leave somebody like you?
Well, to be honest, Batya, it leaves a lot of people like me stranded. People who have been Democrats for their whole careers, their whole lives, very proudly liberal, very proudly Zionist and pro-Israel, looking around and wondering, do we still have a home in this party? Are we still going to be allowed to sit at the table while we also support Israel? There are American Jews who are always at the table in Democratic coalitions, and there still are. But the price now is becoming high. And the price now for entry oftentimes is saying Israel is committing genocide and war crimes and throwing off one's connection to it. I'm not going to do that. I know many people are not like that across the country, but we're all looking around and wondering, is this the moment? Are we being tested in a way where we have to make that choice, which would be very unfortunate for the Democratic Party and, of course, for American Jews?
Well, what's the answer? Is this the moment?
This is getting to be the moment. We are getting there. It is clearly a moment of crisis in the party. It is a crisis moment for the American Jewish community. We have seen a bubbling up of anti-Semitic rhetoric that continues to grow. We've seen attacks against Jewish Americans that have cost lives. And instead of diminishing the hate speech and the incitement, we're now seeing it corroborated in elections. And that is dangerous. And we need moral leadership from our leaders to stem the tide.
So do you see a mass exodus of American Jews from the Democratic Party into the Republican Party?
The question of that is one that depends on the leadership's response. if the leadership of the party and if the sane leaders who want to try to tamp down the hate and the incitement that American Jews are feeling in the party, if they don't come to the table and push back on it, we will see a diminishment of democratic support amongst Jewish Americans.
God bless, Joel. That took a lot of courage.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me. That's what's happening with Washington and Israel. But I'd like us to take a closer look at what's happening inside Israel and how the conflict with Syria is affecting real communities on the ground. Here to help us with that is Anan, Kheir, a former IDF officer and lawyer from the Druze community involved in advocating for Druze integration into Israeli society. Anan, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, USA. Good morning from Israel. Thank you.
And thank you for waking up so early to be here with us. Tell us a little bit about what was happening in Suwaida to members of your community.
Thank you for that question. What's been going on in Suwaida is not less than ethnic cleansing. They're killing people just because they are Druze. They're aiming for children, women, elderly, whatever they can kill. Brutally vandalizing homes, torturing them. We've seen horrible evidences that remind us of dark days of humanity. It reminds us of a terrible Holocaust. It reminds us of October the 7th. We've seen like babies being burned alive. We've seen a video of a person being tied to a chair, burned while his family was watching. We've seen a video of family who was trying to drive outside one of the villages. The car was burned and the people were shot inside while they had two babies. Absolutely terrible, things that the human mind cannot even think about.
Why did Israel get involved?
I think so. Israel got involved, first of all, because of the Druze in Israel. They have a moral obligation to do so. But Israel is a sovereign state. Syria is supposed to be a sovereign state. You know, the people, the Druze in Syria are supposed to be saved by the Syrian government. But the Syrian government are the one that sent these brutal murderers and terrorists to do what they did. We're talking about a toll of up to between 700 and 1,000, and that's not even, we're just starting. You know, I had a very interesting conversation with one of the doctors in the Suwaida hospital. I managed to reach one of them, and the images that he described is not something that we can even imagine. And he said that the death tolls, we're just beginning to see it because some areas in some rural villages, people haven't gotten to these areas. So maybe like there are still somebody's inside some of the houses. So we're talking between 700 and 1,000, and these numbers, you know, can rise. We hope not.
So what you're saying is that you, as a Druze Israeli, your government intervened and bombed what was happening to your people, a massacre that was happening to Druze in Syria at the behest of its own citizens. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. The Israeli government intervened because of what Sheikh Muaffaq Tarif, our spiritual leader, and the rest of the Israeli population in Israel. We tried our best to let the government hear us. You know, we had people go on the streets and demonstrate, asking the government to help our brothers and sisters from Syria, because no one is helping them. And you know what? The world is silent on these atrocities. So it's only Israel. If it wasn't for Israel, you know, the deaths I think it would be tens of thousands. It's a Holocaust, no less than that.
Anan, Kheir, God bless you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to let the world know what's going on.
Thank you, sir.